Okay, great. So thank you very much. Apologies for that little glitch. And thank you, Louise, for those opening remarks. They were really inspiring. I look forward to having a discussion at the end here, a little chat with all the people. I was looking at the identities of people coming in, so keep putting those in there because it's lovely to know who's in the room. It's so much nicer to be face to face, but here we are. So we'll make the most of it. So as Nicola so nicely said, I'm Sandra Ryan. My background is a primary teacher a very long time ago, actually, a researcher. Then I did my PhD and master's in the USA in evaluation, educational evaluation, actually in the 90s before it became trendy. And then worked in the Educational Research Centre in Drumcondra, leading the evaluation of a pilot scheme in 1990 on homeschool community liaison. So it was quite innovative over 30 years ago. And really it was from that research and working with the schools so closely in that scheme, which is still ongoing today, a teacher is given the full responsibility and the role to work directly with parents and linking with the staff and, is the conduit for all this work. So based on that research, I really was convinced of the importance of parent engagement to break the cycle of disadvantage. And I do work with, we call them DESH schools. DESH, the word DESH in the Irish language means opportunity. So an attempt to get away from that awful negative nomenclature, marginalised, at risk, all of those words that are so negative. But really the whole idea of that is to make a difference for their children's learning. And again, there were echoes of that in what Louise was speaking about just now. So I've been lecturing in Mary Immaculate College since 2000, and I've always included a lecture or two maybe in my courses about working with families. But it's really in the last 10 years that I have a module. It's an elective module, so only 30 students out of 450 can take it. But now, starting in September, aligning with our new Teaching Council standards, every student will be receiving a module on parent engagement. So it's taken a while, but we're getting there. And so I was drawing on a lot of excellent research from the USA and Canada and the UK for that course. And in a few years ago with a colleague, Carol Lannon, who was a national coordinator for that scheme at the time, we decided to revisit HSCL 25 years on and see, what was going on and what excellent work, because there wasn't a lot disseminated about it. And so that's what the book is. We went around the country identifying good practice and talking to people about their work, and we've tried to pull it together in the book, and I'll tell you about that a bit later. So it's research based, but we have ensured to make it practical and easy for teachers, because we know busy teachers in busy classrooms, need something that's easy to do. So the feedback so far has been very positive. And I'm chair of the TED project, which works with disadvantaged schools in Limerick, and we have a lot of innovative work. That website, TED, it's on the Mary Immaculate website. Most importantly, I'm a mother of 3 daughters, the youngest of whom is heading into her leaving certificate and studying next door. She's just turned 18, so they're all adults now. But being a parent, and not to undermine or underestimate anybody who isn't, but it really does give you such an insight into this work particularly, and just experiencing children's journeys of schooling and education system and what it's like to be on the other side of the door. So very much I see our job as educators as linking into the strengths and influence of parents, and to support and empower them to work with us and with their child, both within and beyond the school walls. And finally, another important point is that busy schools shouldn't look on parent engagement as a new task, and we should look at it really as a different way of viewing our job and our role and our work, and seeing what we do through the lens of engaged families, and adding it into what we're doing in a way that achieves our objectives, our curricular objectives, our objectives, of developing children holistically. So I think that's what we have in the book as well, ideas of how parents can link in to the curriculum. And of course, yeah, I'll talk more about it anyway. So that's an overview. Again, that's my personal declaration. Why do we need parent engagement? I think we've already heard a few ideas on that. I want to just check in with beliefs and assumptions, a little bit on terminology. We'll look quickly at a few research outcomes, just an overview, because it really is important that we do work from an evidence base, in this day and age with education. And we now have 5 decades of research on parent and family engagement. The need for teacher education, absolutely. And today's session is just a tiny little dot really in that. And then the strategic framework that was launched on Thursday, really, really valuable and exciting framework. So the rationale, a child spends 85% of their time outside of school. And we have them for 15% of their time. Joyce Epstein says there's no topic in education on which there's greater agreement than the need for family and community involvement. But yet we seem to be very slow to implement and to move the change along. And I've been watching it for over 30 years, and it's developing. And we have some very, very excellent practices in our DEIS schools, but in the non-DEIS schools around Ireland, we're still not at that point at all. And it is a question, as Louise mentioned, of advancing democratic practices, children's rights to have their parents involved, parents' rights to be involved. And, the UNCRC is one reference to that. The Irish Constitution enshrines parents' role as well as the primary educators. So we have a little Mentimeter there because we've been listening to people talking for a while, and I'm conscious that people just walk away from the laptop. So just to check now that you're still here, Beverly's going to share a Mentimeter poll, I think, and we just ask you to think back to your own childhood. How did your parents educate you? And how did they do it, first of all? What kinds of things did your parents do? My grandmother was a great reader, and she always read to us and had us reading, and my mother as well. Also, we spent a lot of summers at the beach, and I still have a love of sea swimming because of it. when the weather cooperates as it is now. We've a lovely heat wave in Ireland at the moment, so I'm off to the beach after this. So read to you, yes, the love of books, bedtime stories, absolutely. We did that with our own children. And it was interesting, my husband had never experienced that as a child. He grew up on a farm and he got a huge value out of reading to our daughters. So it's interesting how it works both ways. Encouraged us to ask questions, helped with homework, taught me to cook, absolutely. Reading comes up again, and we've lots of lovely literacy ideas in the book. Talking to me, yes, never shying away from, absolutely, having my own opinions, trips to the library, play with purpose, although, yeah, absolutely, how to have empathy for others, absolutely. Setting values and independence, yeah. Such key things, our values, our identity is so tied up with our family background, and we do tend to forget about it. I can't see that one now with the code. Yeah, appreciating the environment. Yeah, showed an interest, bought us books, took to the library. Oh, practical skills, wonderful. Yeah, got involved in their business. Oh, answering the phone, greeting customers. Yeah, and our girls were out milking cows and feeding calves, I can tell you. They didn't dare say they were bored. Reading it by bedtime, taught to knit. And that is, yeah, absolutely. So it's the values, it's that work ethic, it's, that idea of the structure, the home learning environment, the research we talk about. So absolutely. Okay, thank you for all those wonderful ideas. So the next piece now is, what did they teach you? I think we've kind of took you to playgrounds, and I think you've said what they taught you. But how they did it. But how they did it usually was singing and playing and listening. Yes, so in action. So home learning tends to be contextualized and active, whereas school learning can often be decontextualized and more formal. And so yeah, so we've had really both. I think anything else new there? Sometimes it takes a bit of time to get into the technology. Singing and playing, yes, I remember my grandmother was a great singer as well, and I sang in the church choir, and now I'm in a choir, which is great. Values, manners, practical tasks, decorating. Yeah, self-confidence, isn't that so important? Respect and empathy, and I think our world needs empathy more than it ever did now. And respect, how to love, independence, having a committed work ethic, absolutely, absolutely. Really important values. And actually, when I ask some of the undergrad students this question, they'll say, I can't think of anything. So funny, that they just, oh no, they didn't teach us anything. No, to care for others, love for nature and the environment, absolutely. Wonderful. So that's so uplifting. So thanks, Beverly, for that. I'll go back to my slide there now. Oh, is it sharing again, or do I need to redo that? Share again. So here we go. So parents are just so central to all our lives, and continue to be. My adult daughters, there might be, oh, what about the health insurance, mom? And I still phone my mother, for advice and encouragement, and share the highs and the lows. Isn't that right? That's where we go in our most joyous times and in our saddest times. And when we think of all the things we know because of our parents and all the things we've learned and the things they've taught about us, cognitively, emotionally, socially, physically, spiritually, it's a massive job that they do. And it begins at birth and it continues on across our lifetime. And the parents' role, I see it as to help children realise their hopes and dreams. And it is a lifelong process. So they really are the primary people in their children's lives, the primary educators. But Debbie Pusher puts it really nicely, from birth to forever. And Joyce Epstein, a huge figure in this work, and has been doing this research for over 50 years now. I see Joyce as the matriarch of this work. And she talks about overlapping spheres of influence, and that when we're working towards excellent schools, successful schools, strong families and healthy communities, the child is at the centre of it. And family, and Epstein refers to these as overlapping spheres of influence, and they can be brought together or they can be pushed apart. And you can see, when they're pushed apart, the child could drop through the middle. And we have lots of examples with research on early school leavers and so on, of where that often happens. So, a mindset that thinks about separate spheres, and it's quite traditional, and it would have been the mindset when I qualified as a teacher. That's actually 40 years ago this week, imagine. The family should do their job and we'll do our job. And the family hands over education responsibility to the school. And Annette Leroux has done a really interesting work, Home Advantage, and then Inequality. It was a second publication in 2011. Whereas if we think with a mindset of overlapping spheres as educators, then our mantra would be, I can do my job better with the help of students' families and support from the community that we work in. And parents then want to know what's happening in the school in order to help their child. And sometimes they don't know how to help. And I see it as our role to support that too. So, and in order to build these connections and to keep these spheres of influence connected, we need clear and comprehensive communication. We need to build an ethos where we all see it as part of our role, and with lots of interactions between schools and families and communities, so that students are getting a common message from the variety of people with whom they're working, about the importance of school, about the importance of working hard, of thinking creatively, of helping one another, and of staying in school. And that's all from Joyce Epstein. So this acknowledges actually that children are the main actors in their own education and their own lives. And I think increasingly we need to move to that, that we tend to do things to them and for them, instead of giving them agency. And increasingly, I think we see that that's the importance of that. And the assumption then is that if children feel cared for and encouraged to work hard, they're more likely to do their best to learn and develop other skills and talents. I've talked too much. We all need to remember that parents love their children, and we need to believe that. And sometimes it can be easy to lose sight of it, particularly in difficult communities and environments and so on. And as teachers, we tend to think from the outside. I remember my mother telling me a story once that she was waiting outside the school for my brother, and she observed, there were hundreds of children, but only one child mattered to me, and that in that moment. And as teachers, we have lots of children to care for and to care about, but the child is at the centre of the parent's world. And this book is just published. Professor Katrina O'Sullivan from Maynooth University, just aligning to the idea of one good adult that can make a difference. She's just published this book. She grew up as a child of both her parents were heroin addicts, and she was living in care and in and out of care. And her book is a stirring argument, really, for the importance of looking out for our kids and of giving them hope and practical support and meaningful opportunities. So that's my summer reading. And Katrina gives lots of examples. I heard her interviewed on the radio yesterday just about key adults, some of whom were teachers or workers in care institutions, who made a difference to her life, in fact, and without whom she wouldn't be where she is now. She was pregnant at 15 and so on. So a really good, I'm looking forward to reading that book. And a lot of it comes back to our beliefs and assumptions. And and I'm not sure about Scotland, but in the Irish context, most of our young student teachers and most of our teaching profession come from middle class backgrounds, and we've succeeded in the system. It's worked for us, and it's difficult then to understand how it doesn't work for others. And it's about we often think about, we look outwards and we see families struggling maybe with social and economic challenges of living in poverty or working in low-paid jobs, or some who are unemployed. We see a range of education experiences from none, practically less so now in the modern world, but low literacy levels, or families who are new to our country, and the most recent immigrants to Ireland, and I'm sure to Scotland too, are coming from Ukraine and war-torn areas there, and of course Sudan now as well, and all around the world. And, they may not yet understand the systems and structures of our schools, and some don't speak English and so on. So often when we're, as educators, looking outwards, we focus on the challenges that exist, and we pay attention to who the families are or who they're not, actually, what they have or what they don't have, and how much they can or cannot support the school's agenda. And usually it's to meet the school's agenda. And at times we blame them then, if only they would do this, if only they'd buy the maths book or send the child to school. And of course that's true. Or, these parents don't just care enough. And, so it can create feelings of detachment or distance from school staff and parents. And we do position ourselves as the experts, really, in relation to children's learning. And parents are considered to be engaged only if they attend school functions, make sure the homework is done, turn out for the sports day, make the sandwiches for whatever it is, sign the forms, and do the things that we tell them to do, So, instead of that, an idea would be to begin our work with families by looking inwards. And the only thing we can control as educators is ourselves, ultimately. And when we examine how our beliefs and assumptions shape our practices in reaching out to families, we can see new possibilities. So Debbie Pusher has done some really nice work. I don't have time to get into it today, but, don't take our beliefs and assumptions for granted, to examine them, make them conscious, disposition ourselves. And she talks about creating family-centric schools, Joyce Epstein talks about family-like schools and school-like families, to meet again that overlap. So there are no quick fixes and there is no magic wand, unfortunately, to build. And it takes time and it takes patience and it takes a sustained approach. And often it takes the building of trust and the building of positive relationships. And that was always the focus of the homeschool liaison scheme in Ireland, to meet families with positive messages, and generally the opposite occurs. If I see a missed call on my phone from the school, it's the first reaction is what's wrong, because we tend to send the note home when the child's in trouble, or and so on. And it's very easy to turn that practice around, to just send a little note, Mary did such wonderful art today, in school, and just to make that message positive. So, in thinking about that, these are just some guiding questions. What do I believe about parents and the community in which I work? Do I know them? Am I scared of them? Home visitation now is becoming a huge part of this work. It's mandated as a third of what the HSCL coordinators do. They're expected to spend 33% of their time visiting homes, so about 2 home visits a day, and they have prioritized families, but the message is intended to be positive, supportive, to listen, and sometimes teachers go, and I see there's a lot of home visitation now coming up in the US. Actually, if you follow me on Twitter, I often share some of that work, and teachers are doing some of the work on home visitation. And I understand, from a union point of view and from a teacher's role and all of that, that all needs to be worked through and people should be comfortable and so on. But often by going to these homes, it's just eye-opening for teachers to see the challenges really of a single parent, dad or mom or whatever. And then what role do I believe parents and community should play in the school? I've met so many principals who tell me, oh yeah, our parents are fantastic, and they drop the kids at the gate and then they collect them again in the evening. And once they're out there, we're happy, and that's marvelous, but it's not exactly the focus of the work. And the walls don't crumble when parents, have a say. And we have a chapter in the book about decision making and so on. And there is a power element that's at play too, and it does. I would say I would recommend a very gently approach. What opportunities have I given parents and community members to be meaningfully engaged? So just I leave those with you, and there are actually lots of checklists now available to look at how parent friendly is our school, and so on. The terminology, I'm a little bit into this. You've heard me use these terms: school, family, community partnership, parent family involvement, parent family engagement, and so on. We won't get into it now. And in this strategic framework, you have family learning and learning at home too. I suppose these are the definitions that are used in the framework. I think they're very good ones. They're very clear. I think for the work that you're doing in Scotland, and if we were when we were doing it here in Ireland, the main thing is, we can bandy around definitions and maybe never reach agreement fully on, the slight emphasis. But the main thing is clarity and a shared understanding, and what we're trying to achieve. Because if we don't have an understanding of where we're trying to go to, then it's harder to reach that goal. So I really find that it's really very well defined in the document, and I think it's a great signpost really for the work that you're engaged in. Yeah, and we can come back to that for anybody. And yes, this is just a little gif from Debbie Pusher, just to show how, our roles complement each other, and when the cogs fit together and work together, everything turns, rather than when they're disconnected, then we can still work away on our own, but maybe not as effectively. So some of the research findings, there's widespread agreement. We've over 50 years research on this, 5 whole decades, that children are more successful in school, they like school better, and they stay in school longer when their families and schools work together to support their learning. And teachers want the best for their students. Teachers really care about their students. They become invested in them. I see it even with my student teachers out in schools. They just develop such strong relationships with little children in the course of 2 weeks even, and so on. And they want families to influence and guide and assist children, and they want to know how to work with parents in positive ways. And families want the best for their children too, and they want to communicate with teachers and find out how to help their children do their best. And children want to succeed in school, students and young people, and they need support and encouragement and guidance from all of the partners. So we have there's a whole range of positive outcomes. And Steve Sheldon has done really great work at Johns Hopkins University. I've just put in a couple of references there. Steve has concentrated a lot on academic outcomes, so we know literacy improves, numeracy improves, science, other areas, school attendance, behaviour, social skills, motivation and interest in learning, and we're often tearing our hair out as educators to see how can I switch this child on, how can I get them to engage with me, and so, we use whatever we can, I suppose, that works with children and learners. Greater engagement in schoolwork, higher educational aspirations and expectations, so important, particularly in communities where education has not been a feature. We've communities in Limerick where nobody in the community has gone on to third level. Many have finished, dropped out of school at 15 or 16, haven't even completed the senior cycle. So if you can't see it, you can't be it, and so I see, encouragement, self-esteem, all of that is so central to what we do. And teachers have such a powerful role. We are just so well placed to make a difference to children, for better or for worse, unfortunately. And we all remember the excellent, fabulous teachers we have, and we remember the duds as well, unfortunately. And, hopefully there are fewer and fewer of those. But, giving children this value of education, and when for parents for whom the system didn't work, it's hard for them to, oh, well, sure, school was no good to me, and it's just to help them realise, and by coming into schools, they see, oh, these teachers really care about our children. Our children love being in school. Their face lights up when they see their mum or dad coming. I had students out recently doing science for fun. That's that photograph there, actually. So this is, I don't know if my pointer's working, but the lady on the left is one of my students, and the lady in the white is one of the mums. And the children just love to see their parents coming, and the students noted this, in their reflections they observed, yes, how it really motivated. And transitions then is another time where it makes a difference, moving from primary to post-primary, and then just trying to get people engaged in third level. We've done better. We've higher participation rates at post-primary level now, and there is progression on to third level as well in Ireland, but not to the prestigious courses. So, so we still have a way to go in that. And this is work from the US Department and the Family Engagement Center in Ohio State University. I'd encourage you to look at that work as well, the Family Engagement Center. Barbara Boone is heading that up there, and they're doing really innovative work, and they have really excellent resources on their website as well. And this is just looking at all of those: family engagement, family involvement, however you define them. But this is the impact on student achievement. So we have here to the left things like celebrations, fundraisers, the Americans call it potlucks, bringing food, picnics or whatever, performances, showcases, helping on admin tasks, all of those things are great and wonderful, and ways to build community and fun and relationships and connections. But really, this is where we need to be on to the right of that continuum to have an impact on children's achievement. So, data sharing of folders, and I know you're just up the walls with paperwork, so I don't advocate that necessarily, but home visits are in there, but modelling of learning support strategies. And we have loads of examples in the book of, how you can achieve your literacy objectives by, having parents in to observe. And I don't mean having parents hanging out the windows or, crowding out the classroom, but by parents being in to help with, we call them station teaching, so little small groups that children rotate around, but the teacher models at first the literacy, the book, look at the picture, look at the cover, can you guess what it would be about, and what are the illustrations, and all of that. You know how to do this so well, and parents don't always know that. And they learn so much. I had parents tell me, parents of preschool kids say, I want to know how to talk to my child the way the teacher does. Behavior, managing behavior, seeing the strategies that are so effective in classrooms. Parents learn so much by being in on that, and observations. And I will say that a couple of parents ran away from science for fun, when we were doing it there in March. And that's okay. It's not their thing. But, the next job then is to find their thing, and so we'll have maybe 6 or 7 parents who love science for fun. And we had a couple of dads who were electricians. My goodness, they were away in a hack doing electricity with kids. But then maybe someone else will show them how to do the knitting, or cuddle in the corner with books, or whatever it is, so it's not a one size fits all, and it's about a gently approach. And this is Epstein's framework. I took this directly. It's a screenshot of your lovely strategic framework, just how the different activities can be categorized, really, or linking them in. And that is around, I was using that in 1990, and it has stood the test of time, really. So just to refer you to that. So what we really need to work towards is having parent engagement. As I use that term because I like it. I think it represents, the real overlap, the right hand side of that continuum. It needs to be part of the core work of our schools and settings. It needs to be part of the mindset of, yes, this is what I do as a teacher. So I'm hopeful now, when we're introducing core modules now in our teacher education programs from September, that it will be just taken as given. And I feel that I need to work with my colleagues across the college, in the pedagogical areas, to say, okay, my colleagues who are doing maths ed, right, so what do we do about parents in maths ed? How can you do it? It can't be just one module inoculation kind of, right, we'll give them a shot of parent engagement and that'll solve it. It really has to be the mindset of coming from, okay, what are my literacy colleagues, in terms of learning, early learning, reading, and so on, up the school. Science ed, we've done a little bit with the science people, and so on. So it has to be, like maths or literacy, part of what we do, and also, as I said, it needs to complement what we're doing. It needs to fit with the teacher's plan, not just random acts of parent involvement that are fun and nice to do, but and in a way, what I did by bringing the students in to do science, in a way it was a bit random, but the intention was that it should fit with the class teacher's plan for science. So electricity and magnetism are part of our curriculum in 3rd and 4th class here, and the idea would be that the teacher does that preliminary work with the children, and then the parents come in to do the activity-based thing that's difficult for a teacher to do with a class of 30 children, and that it consolidates what needs to be done, and it's part of the work that's done. It's planned for, it's timetabled, it's carefully delineated. It's not an add-on, and it helps the teacher to achieve their learning outcomes for children as well. So we do need professional development, and this need again is well established for over 20 years. You wonder why we keep talking about it, and yet now finally there seems to be some action. And up to now there has been very little in teacher education programs worldwide, and I have a review of that in the book as well, actually. Now there is increased legislation in many countries that requires teachers to work, and the accreditation requirements similar to your own and our own teaching council ones. And I was so impressed. I took a screenshot of Louise's slides there. This is what we have in our teaching council standards: professional relationships and working with parents. We have a little way to go, folks, and you know, I think we'll be looking towards Scotland as a model of good practice in relation to this. So thank you for that. I've had an elective course, as I said, since 2015, but to my knowledge, it was the only course in Ireland. The National Parents Council was doing a small module as well with colleagues in the second level part of Mary Immaculate College too. So very little, but hoping to see more. And we know as well, from a teacher's point of view, and I know there are other education professionals and carers, and I apologise for just adopting the word teacher, but it's encompassing all of you who work with children in any role. Establishing relationships with families is the most significant challenge actually for young teachers, and we have research to say that, and they report high levels of anxiety in dealing with parents. And my students were really apprehensive and really nervous about meeting parents, and you know, having done it, they felt, oh wow, these parents are people like me, and you know, worried too. We were working with traveller parents. Irish travellers are a minority group in Ireland, an ethnic minority group, and the students who may not have ever encountered travellers before, you know, they were worried about offending them in terms of understanding their culture and so on. And one student observed, you know, I realised the child is the common ground here, and both of us were working towards that. So on the second visit, she was more comfortable and less hung up about what are the differences between us, and looking at, well, what are we both working for? So it's very powerful actually for young student teachers to have that insight, I think. And the future of school-family partnership rests in improving teacher education. And Joyce Epstein said that in 1992. So you can see it's a while ago. And some of the challenges is this cultural disconnect that I just mentioned. No experience of being a parent, often very young teachers, school ethos of family roles, mixed messages from staff, and it's really important that the leadership and management in the school has this ethos, you know, and that the message is coming is part of a whole school action. And our university regulations limit student-teacher interactions with families and communities as well. So I'm hoping to see that moving a little bit, and I'm interested to really hear about how you're doing that in Scotland too. And then this was what some of my students said, having been out. This course, this was research that I did on the course actually a couple of years ago, 2019 actually. The plan was to revisit those students in 2021 when they'd been working with parents for a year. Well, you can see where that plan went out the window with COVID, but we'll do it again. We'll start again. So they said, this course showed me how to interact with parents appropriately. I feel more ready now. I know strategies to use when dealing with difficult parents. You know, they're out there too. We've difficult teachers as well. Difficult people in all walks of life. I used to be afraid of how to include parents in the classroom, but this has changed now. And I asked them, did they think that all students should get a module on parent engagement? And all but one of them, there's always one, said yes. And why? Because from talking to friends, I know they would not know how to engage with families or feel the importance to do it. I had no idea parents could be involved in the classroom. I have seen so many examples and how excited they are to help out. It's an endeavour that many teachers have little knowledge about and find daunting, but can be so worthwhile. School-parent relations are more important to children's education and development than I previously thought. Parent involvement is crucial. So those are my students, my wonderful students from 2019, and they didn't even get a chance to work with parents to the same extent that this year's group did. They were out just kind of observing HSCL activities. So it's nice to see that. But the implications overall, I think, you know, that's really one exciting thing about your framework. You've got the becoming, being, and I've forgotten it now, Beverly, the three categories: becoming, being, and growing. And I love that. I think it's so, I think there's a certain amount I can do at initial teacher education, and I think there's so much more that needs to happen at school level. I think as a staff group, there needs to be shared agreement with the parents too and the community. Okay, so what's our focus here? What are we comfortable with? What are we working towards? What meets our objectives? What meets our learning outcomes? So there are limitations. There are, the readiness, timing within the program. As I said, I really feel it needs to come through lots of modules, not just one. And then continuous professional and school leadership. I've mentioned that. Need for link to practice and the challenges of it, because there are challenges. We had two parents who ran away from us, and the students were upset, so we had to work through that to see, and different parents came the next time, and so it's like anything that we do. We learn from doing it. We try to do it better the next time. And what are the methodologies? It must be interactive, discursive, reflective, and linked to practice. It's not I really feel the challenges, and I'm not sure how I'm going to tackle that in September, of working with 450 students, because I do think to challenge assumptions, to have people examine, their values, their experiences and so on. It's not something you do in a lecture, in my opinion. But anyway, we'll figure out some way to do that. And again, here I am doing a lecture as well, so apologies for that. So I mentioned our book. It has practical ideas about tried and tested, about what's worked. There are lots of other ideas with Joyce Epstein's national network of partnership schools at Johns Hopkins University as well. So we looked at practices across Ireland. So there are lots of literacy ones, numeracy ones, fun, science for fun, history trails, school gardens, geography ideas, nutrition, marketing, food labeling, reaching all parents. We've looked at, how to reach fathers, because that's a challenge within this work as well. Issues of diversity and inclusion, and we haven't addressed inclusion in terms of special education needs. That was really outside of the scope of what we could do, but one of my colleagues here in the college has done a PhD in that area. And teacher professional development for family engagement as well. The need for it, I suppose, is covered. And so back to Concepta Conity, who was the visionary and the pioneering educator who actually was at the forefront in setting up the HSCL scheme in 1990. You can read that when the slides are circulated, but one of the points is that when we're trying to change school culture, we need teachers to be the medium through which this change will pass. Otherwise, it will be resisted. So, for this wonderful strategic framework to work, it's over to all of you to adopt it and to work through it and to see. And Debbie Pusher talks about changing teachers' hearts, not just their minds. And I think that's really important. And I could see that ethos coming through in your teaching standards, and it's heartening to see it. It's so exciting to see the potential, in our roles as educators to change lives. But we know it takes a long time, and it has to be supported by evidence-based research. And I know you have lots of policy, and even though there's a little bit of critique of the Scottish Schools Parent Involvement Act 2006, I still think it's wonderful to have it there, and the clear articulation of where you want to go, and defining it, and what it should look like in Scotland. And I also am very impressed and compliment you on the strength of that this work has been developed collaboratively and across, teachers and social care, early years, social work, ITE providers, it's fantastic. And There is a lot in it. It's a really exciting development. I was going through it to see, you know, which boxes did I tick, and boy golly, I have to up my game a little bit, I think, in terms of meeting these standards. I think it's quite ambitious, so but very exciting. And those are my contact details. Unfortunately, our website for the curriculum development unit is under being rebuilt, or whatever they call it, under construction at the moment. So email, if you want to, email cdu@mic.ul.ie if you're interested in a copy of the book. Follow me on Twitter if you wish, those are my email details. I do share as much as I can about some of the really good work going on around the world. So I look forward to hearing from you on that. So thank you very much. I went a little bit over, apologies.
Thank you very much indeed, Sandra, for a really wonderful keynote, full of lots of rich insights to research and linking it to the Scottish context, which is so important for us in the room today.